You've got a drawer full of tools you actually know how to use, not decorative pieces. Tools with dried caul on the handles, the rubber grip worn down to bare metal. Tools that have been lent out and came back worse. You've rewired things, patched things, diagnosed the weird noise the car was making before anyone else in the car even registered it as a sound. You figured out how to bleed a radiator by watching a YouTube video at midnight with a flashlight clenched in your teeth. And then you did it, and it worked, and you told nobody because why would you? Somewhere along the way, you became the person people turn to when things fall apart, especially the things no one really knows how to fix. The 2 a.m. calls, the I don't know who else to talk to moments, and you take them on, the same way you take on everything else, without hesitation or recognition, never making it feel like it costs you anything, even when it does. So why, when your back gives out mid-job trying to move a washing machine that genuinely required 2 people, do you spend 4 minutes calculating whether you can finish the job yourself before you even entertain the idea of asking? This goes deeper than stubbornness. Well, it's partially stubbornness, but the full picture is more uncomfortable than most people want to sit with for very long. There's a specific kind of person who learns, usually early, that the most reliable way to get something done is to do it themselves. A part of it may have been because the people around them were absent or cruel, but more often it was because at some point they reached for help, and the help didn't quite reach back. It might have been something small. A parent who was too stretched to notice. A household where needing things felt like adding weight to an already heavy pile. A moment where asking would have made everything harder. And somehow they clocked that even as a kid. And they adapted. They became the one who figured it out. And adaptations once formed don't dissolve when the original condition changes. They harden and become the shape of you. So now you're 37 or 52, and you are demonstrably good at solving problems. You've earned that. And your identity, the quiet, internal story you run about who you are, is built on a foundation of competence, on not needing to call anyone, on being the number people dial when they do need to call someone. Asking for help doesn't just feel inconvenient inside the story. It feels like a crack in the foundation. Here's what most conversations about this completely miss. People who fix everything don't resist asking for help because they think they're more capable than everyone around them. The resistance comes from somewhere much less flattering and much more human than ego. Asking requires sitting for a moment in the experience of not knowing, of visibly being the one who can't. And that specific experience is the one they spent years conditioning themselves to move past as fast as possible. The discomfort of that moment isn't just uncomfortable, it's almost allergic, like a physical flinch. There's a study by Flynn and Lake in 2008 where they found that people consistently underestimate how willing others are to help them. Participants predicted far lower compliance rates when asking for help than actually occurred. The world was significantly more willing than people assumed. So, the problem wasn't availability, but the internal cost of asking. People weren't accurately calculating whether others would help. They were weighing what it would mean about them to need it. And that judgment kept returning an answer they couldn't accept. For someone whose entire sense of self is organized around being the capable one, that second question has a specific and destabilizing answer. People who fix things develop what is almost a physical relationship with competence. There's a particular satisfaction that happens when you find the fault in a system and correct it. When the thing that wasn't working works, it's not vanity. Most fixers aren't doing any of it for applause. It's more like evidence. Every fixed thing is a quiet proof of something about you, a record, which means every unfixed thing, every moment of standing in front of a problem with no clear path through it, is registering somewhere as the counter record.
And the brain doesn't sit comfortably with that. The emotional dimension of this is worth staying with for a bit. The person who is always the stable one in a crisis, who absorbs someone else's panic and converts it into a plan, who knows what to say. They often find receiving emotional support almost physically awkward. Someone tries to sit with them in something hard, and they're problem-solving their way out of the conversation,
before the other person has finished the sentence. I'm fine. I've thought through it. Here's what I'm going to do. Being held feels sometimes more uncomfortable than whatever they were carrying. Fixing their own feelings alone is just easier, cleaner. And then there's the layer underneath all of that, one that takes the most honesty to look at. A lot of fixers believe somewhere quiet and pre-verbal that needing help is a burden, that showing up with empty hands and a visible problem is taking something from someone. This didn't arrive from nowhere. It came from watching a parent stretched beyond their limit, or from being told explicitly, or in the language of sighs and silences and closed doors, that they shouldn't need things. Or from years of being the person other people leaned on, until leaning felt like a privilege that belonged to other people, not them. The most devastating part of all of it is this: fixers are almost always extraordinary at helping other people. They show up with tools, literal and otherwise, and they leave things better than they found them. They would never, not once, make someone feel like a burden for asking. They'd be genuinely offended if you suggested they would. And yet, they are completely, stubbornly, and sincerely convinced that they would be. If something in your chest went slightly tight somewhere in the last few minutes, you know why. The solution isn't learning to just ask for help. That advice is about as useful as telling someone with a fear of heights to simply look down and relax. The actual shift is slower and stranger than a piece of advice can carry. It involves genuinely updating the internal story about what asking means. Not performing vulnerability like a skill you've recently acquired. Actually contemplating with the possibility, which will feel genuinely foreign, that needing something doesn't dismantle you. That the people in your life aren't only there to receive what you can give them. Some of the most capable people are actually operating with a quiet lack of ever really being helped. But they've adapted to it so fully that it no longer feels like something missing. It just feels like personality, like that's who they are. Maybe it is who they are. That doesn't mean that's all they're allowed to be. The drawer full of tools is still yours. The 2 a.m. calls, the quiet repairs, the things you absorb so other people didn't have to. None of that stops being real. You can still be the person who fixes things. You're just also allowed to hand someone else the wrench occasionally. One last thing. This isn't really advice in the abstract sense. It's just something I genuinely point people toward if it's relevant to what we've been talking about. There's a link in the description to a bundle of 7-day guides and planners built around the kinds of things people like this tend to quietly deal with on their own. Overthinking everything, running on mental overload, struggling to actually switch off, and trying to fix things internally without ever really resetting properly. Each one is structured around small daily actions, not just information. Because if you're the kind of person who's used to figuring everything out alone, you don't need more theory. You need something that actually helps you move differently day by day. It's in the pinned comment as well if you want to take a look. And if this video resonated with you, subscribing and turning on notifications means you'll catch the next one as soon as it drops.